Okay, so yesterday I got fitted for a hearing aid, which I've now been wearing for 24 hours minus my sleeping time. So I'm going to talk about first impressions, sort of generally, and then specifically what it is to be a musician, and in my case, a pianist, who is now wearing a hearing aid. Um, so a bit of background. I have been deaf in my right ear totally for 20 years, and I've been hard of hearing in my left ear for 10 years, let's say 10 to 15 years. In both cases, the result of surgery to remove acoustic neuromas. In the case of the right side, there was no hearing preservation. For the left, they were able to preserve functional hearing. If you look at my audiogram for the left side, there's a steep cutoff in frequency, sort of midway through the audiogram. So I have very, very little high frequency perception, and sort of, normal, slightly deteriorated lower frequency. And that's a result of surgery, right? The hearing nerve was preserved, but it was damaged by the tumor, and then also a little bit by the rescission, by the surgery. So I've kind of adapted to that, and I'm pretty good at reading lips. Right, that particular kind of hearing loss affects conversational comprehension quite a bit because of the pss, pss, pss sounds, pss, 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 sounds that don't get picked up. And in general, everything is muffled because the higher frequencies are what articulate the conversational pitch. But that I've adapted by just telling people I can't hear them, but also, like I say, by sort of informally lip reading. The pandemic, where everyone wore a mask, was not easy from a communication perspective. And even now, I prefer Zoom because I can use the chat and I can use the speaker capability. Now, as far as music was concerned, there wasn't a whole lot that could be done. Music sound ed, that's an important tense, sound ed, terrible, particularly the piano. I've written about this and I've talked about this as well. When I first struck the piano key after this surgery, it didn't sound like a piano at all. It sounded like a ring modulated Dalek. And I've talked about how I think some of the music I write, particularly where I use ring modulation on a piano, is to work around that underlying sound. Because the weird thing is that after about a month, my brain adapted and filled in the gaps. Kind of. I've always known that what I'm hearing isn't what I'm really registering. There's a level of interpretation as to like what a piano sounds like. When I hear music that I know performed live, like a symphony piece, it sounds okay. This is weird, right? It sounds okay. I'm muffled. I can tell I'm not hearing great, but it sounds okay. A piece that I don't know, it sounds like garbage. I really notice my hearing degradation when it's a new piece. I can tell that the sound is distorted, and I know that I'm not hearing all the frequencies. So in general, this sort of experience with hearing loss and hearing damage has taught me that what we hear is not what's out there. My experience, I think, is particularly precise because there's an immediate before and after and a very clear event. But without doubt, every one of us has idiosyncratic hearing that adjusts for or masks what the real sound really is. And why would I think that any other senses, hearing, visual, smell, they're all the same. They're all filtered through peculiar metabolic, metaphysical, idiosyncratic filters, the sense organs. So the piano had sounded all right. I knew that I was adapting, but I had kind of adapted by being very sensitive to the touch, which I always had been anyway. As a player, I'd always enjoyed the feel of playing, maybe even more than the sound of it. If that makes sense. So one of the things specifically musical that I've noticed, my alarm, I got delayed starting recording this because my microphone connector isn't working on my phone, so I'm actually using my iPad for this, which is why it looks a little bit different. Camera's got a little bit of a different set of whatever, however the camera is different. Anyway, that's 11 o'clock. It tells me I should have been finished. But I'm not even close to finished. I've got plenty more to talk about. So one of the first things that I'm noticing as I play piano with this is that there's a feedback sound that I hear. And some of it may well be just an artifact of the hearing aid. I don't know yet. I think some of it is my brain unraveling the correction that has been in place. Right? Because what this hearing aid is doing, there's actually not a whole lot of amplification in it. It's boosting specific frequencies. So the model I have is the Phonak Lumity L70, which I think has a couple dozen frequencies that are programmed based on my audiogram to be boosted. Now, I know that the frequency isn't frequency is analog. It's not bucketed. It's not digital. So I know I'm hearing a mediated sound. And I'm a bit concerned about that. It's one of the things that I'm going to be paying attention to over the next month is, do I end up feeling like I've just got an artificial equalizer in my ear? Because I don't want that. I'd actually rather be deaf and quiet, than have that sensation. But what I think will happen is my brain will adapt to the available frequencies the way that it adapted to the missing frequencies. And there'll be less to fill in. That's what tinnitus is, mostly, right? Damaged hearing, but the brain fills in. Phantom sound. It's like a phantom limb. And one of the promises of this hearing aid is that over time, the tinnitus will reduce. I have very severe tinnitus. And it won't do anything for the right side because the right side is deaf and not being mediated. But the idea is that the tinnitus in my left ear should reduce as my brain recognizes the new input. I don't know how long it takes to adapt, but they say give a month. And so this is day one. So when I hit a key now and I hear a bit of a feedback, I think it's my brain wondering what this is, because it doesn't happen all the time. And I'm worried that I've been blundering through the piano for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Which is a bit disappointing in terms of my previous life. I don't think that's the case, but I do think that my touch of the keys is going to change. This is coming along with, next month I will be getting a new piano downstairs. Our Samick 5-foot baby grand, which is a really sweet instrument. We've had it for 10 years. In fact, we got it right. We got it right before I had this surgery, where I might have been deaf. So that might have been a very optimistic gesture. And so now I have a new piano coming, a Steinway, and I'll play it with a hearing aid, and I'll see how that goes. The touch is important to me. So I think that's probably generally true for instrumentalists who have suffered hearing loss and are now getting a hearing aid. I'm going to take my individual experience and I'm going to expand it out, because I think probably in all cases our hearing sense adapts. So I never sat around and thought, oh, I can't hear the piano. Oh, the piano sounds weird. My brain took that away, dealt with it for me. You know what I mean? Like my sensory perception. And now it has to readjust. And my question will be whether that feels better or whether I just turn my hearing aid off when I play piano. I don't want my audiologist to hear me say that, because that would be contraindicated for successful hearing aid adoption. In general, though, my first couple of hours were quite exciting. By the end of the day yesterday, I was just exhausted because there's a lot more stuff that I can hear. For example, here's one thing I noticed. Our front door has beeps. They have a keypad. And it beeps. I didn't know that. Maybe I did know that, but I never heard the beeps loud enough to pay attention to them. I came in the door yesterday. I was like, holy shit, our front door beeps. Our dogs are really loud. You often hear them tippy-tapping around here when I make videos. But holy shit, they are loud with their claws on the wood floors. My wife and my daughter have both always told me that they can hear them anywhere in the house. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, they bark, but now they literally mean the tippy-tap of their little paws on the wood. It's really loud. I heard birdsong. I've heard birdsong before, but of course. But I heard it yesterday. I was like, wow, there are a lot of birds out here. And we have a finch. We've always had little birds in our house. And their song is much more elaborate than I thought. That's nice. And then I went and I peed, right? And God, the sound of me peeing into the water was cacophonous. I couldn't believe it. Is that what all of you have been hearing all the time? I don't know. And I can hear my voice. They said this would, you get used to this. It's as if I had headsets on and could hear my voice being fed into my ear. So I'm very aware of the sound of my voice. And I think probably you all with normal ears just get used to that. But I'm still getting used to it. I'm not sure. Maybe I've been shouting for the last 15 years, in which case I apologize. Have I been blundering around, deaf, without realizing it? Perhaps all of my friends have been really irritated with me for a decade. We'll see. So, I like this model. It hooks into my phone, which is kind of slick in terms of being able to stream directly into my ear, passing through the adaptive filters, right? So if I'm listening to music on Spotify into my ear, it has the benefit of being, boosted and amplified. And with that, then I can also, there's a noise reduction component or function, which is pretty cool as well. I can say, while I'm streaming, I don't want any external sound. So if I was on a plane or in a, just didn't want to hear anything, I could do that. It's pretty effective. It's at least as effective as the noise cancellation on my AirPods, and maybe a bit more. So that's good. Anyway, it's not like I opened up a whole new cosmos with this, but there's plenty of new stuff to be thinking about, and it is a bit disorienting. But I'm inclined to think that this is positive. I tried a hearing aid right after my surgery and hated it. From the day I put it in, I hated it. I couldn't stand the sound of my clothes or the sound of my own breath. It just drove me batty. This has a more nuanced understanding. Technology changes all the time with this stuff. So I'm not initially driven crazy by it. I am made a bit disoriented, but I've also been told that that's normal. It's the piano, right? I want that to sound good or to feel good. When I write music on my Eurorack on the synthesizer, I listen to a couple of things that I've made. I don't listen back to a lot of stuff that I've done in general. It sounded fine. It sounded good. It sounded like I'd done more than I thought. What I'm really going to be interested in all of those frequency stuff that's so carefully attuned to my own that deteriorated idiosyncratic hearing. I'm just wondering what I'll find interesting when I start to do it again. Perhaps it'll just be straight up techno. I don't know. But the sort of the jittery, nervous bit and these sort of revolving frequencies. My electronic stuff all kind of sounds the same. Because I think I'm recreating what I hear and filling in the gaps of what I don't hear. And that's going to be different now if I keep my hearing aid in. So we'll see. We'll see what that feels like. Again, I'm less concerned about the output. The output's going to be fine. Nobody listens to it anyway. So that'll be all right. But I wanted to feel jubilant, which it does when I sort of improvise with electronics. It's a it's a metabolic feeling. It's a good feeling, and I want to make sure I still have that. Anyway, I'm sure I'll come back to this. Maybe in a month I'll drop back in, and I'll link to the earlier video I did right before. I did something 6 months ago, I think, about what it is to be a musician with hearing loss. And back then I wasn't even thinking about a hearing aid. So I'll link to that video in here as well. Anyway, thanks for listening. Drop a comment, let me know, and keep your wits about you.